back to another video of In Between the Lines. Today's video, I will be going over the possibility of the San Antonio Spurs being a trade-up option for Zaccharie Risacher, and as you can see, I am a Spurs fan, so I'm going to try my best to be as unbiased as possible when going over the potential trades, and I will try to make the trades make sense for both teams, um, going forward. Now I know that the Spurs do have the fourth overall pick, so the teams in front of us are going to be the Houston Rockets at 3, Washington Wizards at 2, and the Atlanta Hawks at 1. I'm going to start my way from the bottom up, so Houston first, so on and so forth. So let's get started. So to end the year for Zaccharie Risacher, I know that he did average about 10.1 points. He averaged about 3.8 rebounds, 74% from the free throw, 51% from twos, and about 35% from three. I know that at the end of the year, he did have a little bit of a slump, in which dropped his 3-point percentage. But with the possibility of him pairing up with the San Antonio Spurs, I have no doubt in my mind that that percentage will go up with based off of all the double teams that Victor Wembanyama is going to get coming into the year. So I definitely think he'll be able to increase that percentage. So moving on to the Houston Rockets, as you're going to see a trend here with a lot of these trades, or I mean with all of these trades, they're pretty much going to have the same uh, structure, same base, just a little bit more extra once we get higher into the potential trade. But if you're the Houston Rockets, I know that there's been a lot of rumors with them being willing to trade the third overall pick. Now, although I don't think the Houston Rockets are going to be willing to trade with us, with us being in the same conference, and with us not really having um, much of what Houston Rockets I think they would want, honestly. So I really don't see this being a real possibility. I just thought I'd cover it just because, with the Spurs being or wanting to trade up, why not, go over this team. Again, automatically, we're going to have to give up the fourth overall pick, and, the Houston Rockets are going to have to give up their third overall pick. To sweeten the deal, right? If you look at the Houston Rockets, I think one thing that they structured on is going to be shooting. So maybe they want a player like Julian Champagnie or Malachi Branham, or maybe they just want future assets, right? Because they're only dropping down one pick. So I can see them, going either way, but for for this scenario here, I'm gonna just be going over future picks. So maybe all that it'll take would be maybe giving up a pick in 2025, with 2025 being viewed as the better um, draft assets coming into that year. So maybe we give up, I don't know, maybe Charlotte's pick, and maybe we give up a second round pick. Let's give them the 48th pick this year. Now, again, I don't think this deal is going to be likely to happen, but I think this is a trade that I'd feel comfortable giving up if I'm the Spurs. And if you're the Houston Rockets, maybe this is something that you end up doing, especially if are not too high on anyone at 3, and if you feel that the player that you like can be attainable at the number 4th pick. So, this is a start. Again, I don't think it's likely to happen, but I guess we'll see, right? And for the Washington Wizards, same thing for them. We'd automatically have to give up our 4th overall pick for their 2nd overall pick, and obviously it's going to take a little bit more than that to sweeten the deal. But the reason why I feel like the Spurs would want to do this trade is because obviously if Alex Sarr goes number 1 to the Hawks, everything that I'm hearing is that the Washington Wizards are going to take Zaccharie Risacher. But other than that, I mean, another player that I feel that that I've been hearing that the Washington Wizards are intrigued on getting is Donovan Clingan. So maybe them having the 4th overall pick is a much easier pill to swallow when picking him at 4 rather than picking him at 2. So maybe you can talk yourself into doing that if you're the Wizards. And then obviously, we're going to have to sweeten the deal here. So I can see the Spurs throwing in their 35th overall pick. and maybe like a one of our players like Malachi Brenham, um, or Blake Wesley, right? Who were first overall picks back a couple of years ago. So maybe they'll bite on that. But if not, maybe they want a future first, a player that they'll actually get to pick themselves, which I would hope they would be okay with taking Charlotte. But if they feel like that, won't convey it being protected 1 through 14, so maybe they want a pick that's more safer and that'll actually has more of a better chance to convey over. Maybe we throw in Chicago's pick, which is 1 through 10 in 2025. And I mean, I know it's a little bit of a gamble as far as it conveying to a first round pick, but you know, I think with the draft class like 2025, maybe it's a risk worth taking if you're the Washington Wizards. And again, it's not too far of a difference anyways. It's only a 2-pick difference. We're giving them number 4 for their number 2. So, but I think for the Spurs, I think this is the max that I'd be willing to give up, honestly. I wouldn't give them any more than this. And in fact, like if they want a player instead of the 2025 pick, I'd be willing to give up, again, like Blake Wesley, Malachi Brenham. The only players who I would want to keep is Jeremy Sohan, Devin Vassell, and Victor Wembanyama, obviously. Now for the Atlanta Hawks, again, same thing for them. We'd automatically have to give up our 4th overall pick. And honestly, man, if I'm the Atlanta Hawks GM or if I am a Atlanta Hawks fan, I honestly don't want to trade the number 1 overall pick. I'd actually want to pick Alex Sarr and pair him up with Trae Young and see what we got there. And honestly, I wouldn't even want to do any business with the Spurs, especially with how much the Hawks gave up to acquire DeJounte Murray, and a lot of people thinking that the Spurs, fleeced them. But on the other hand, I can see the Atlanta Hawks wanting to try to recover as much assets as possible. And, when you look at it in the grand scheme of things, the 4th pick compared to the 1st pick isn't too much of a gap anyways. So, again, here's just, my thoughts as far as I think what the Spurs would be willing to give up to obtain the 1st overall pick. If you're the Spurs, I think, well, I mean, if you're the Hawks, right? The Spurs have their 2025 first round pick with no protections. Right here, 2025, no protections. And then we have their 2026 first overall pick, but that's just a swap rights. And then we have their 2027 first overall pick, no protections. So obviously they want to try to acquire some of those picks, or as much as possible from what they gave up. But if you're the Spurs, I don't really see them being willing to give up the picks with no protections. I can see them giving up the swap rights for sure, but I don't think they'll give up the 2025 100%, right? Because that being the better draft class. And then I don't see them being able to give up the 2027 only because that's too far in the future, and the Spurs would hope that the Hawks ain't good. But yeah, I just don't see it happening, especially for that small of a gap. I personally don't think Zaccharie Risacher is worth that much to give up. But what I think they'd be willing to give up is maybe Chicago's first overall pick. And maybe Charlotte, only because Charlotte, I really, really doubt that it'll even convey to a first overall pick because it's protected 1 through 14. So I think that'll honestly just convey over to like a future 2nd overall pick. So when you look at it, we'd give them the 4th overall pick, their 2026 swap rights, and then they'd get Chicago's first round pick if it lands outside the top 10, which is another big if, right? Because that could honestly convey into 2nd round picks. And then Charlotte, although it's listed as a first round pick, I think that's gonna be 2nd round picks as well. And maybe this is way too much, honestly, and maybe you don't do Charlotte's first round pick. Maybe you do a couple of seconds, and you call it like that, maybe just like the 48th and maybe another future 2nd. But I think this is kind of somewhat what it'll take to do it if you're the Hawks. And if you're the Spurs, maybe they do this, but I mean, who knows? Honestly, all I know is that I'd be willing to just give up their swap rights, their fourth pick, and maybe like one more future first round. So, but you know, who knows what'll happen? You know, the Hawks have done some crazy trades with us in the past, so hopefully we can do it again, right? But I guess we will definitely see. But all right, so I mean, those are just some trade ideas that I thought, you know, right off the top of my head, as far as what I think it'll take to move up in the draft. Out of all of the teams that I went over, I think the Washington Wizards are probably the most likely to happen. Again, there's a world where I see the Atlanta Hawks, you know, potentially happen, but if you're Atlanta, I think that's going to be hard to sell to their fans. You know, them being willing to give up the number one overall pick, especially with a lot of people feeling that, you know, they gave up too much for DeJounte Murray. So I really don't see it happening. And if you're the Spurs, you know, I just hope that if we don't get any trade candidate to move up for Zaccharie Risacher, we just hope that he falls to us. But it's hard to see that happening with all the hype that he's been gaining. A lot of people are saying that, you know, if he don't go number one to the Hawks, he'll definitely go number two. So, you know, who knows? And then with the Houston Rockets, again, I don't think we'll take him. I mean, I don't think they'll be willing to trade him to us, only because we're in the same conference, and you know, a lot of people think of us as rivals, with us being, you know, both being in Texas. And you know, why would you want to help one team when you're gonna have to compete against us? So I really don't see that happening. But I just thought I'd give you, you know, my ideas and thoughts as far as what I think what'll happen and what it'll take. If you enjoyed today's video, man, please give it a like, subscribe if you are new. I'm definitely going to be trying my best to, you know, pour out more content as we get closer to the draft. And I'm going to be making more trade videos as well, not just with picks, but with, you know, actual players on teams getting traded, different rumors, things like that. So yeah, thank you again for tuning in, and see you on the next one.